The righteous often suffer in ways unfamiliar to others. It's born in their deference, their selflessness, their willingness to give themselves away. It is seen in their willingness to put the needs of others, the interests of others, ahead of their own interests. And because of their quiet, humble, unassuming nature, they are often forgotten, ignored, and taken for granted. And they treat people this way, and they relate this way, because they believe that it is the right thing to do. They are not selfish, ambitious, controlling, or manipulative. In fact, they believe that it is immoral to infringe upon the rights, the needs, the desires, the humanity, the soul, the heart of another person, because they do not live by the code of this world. They live by the code of peace, the code of grace, or mercy, or forgiveness, and faithfulness, and goodness. And people have names for them. Sometimes people refer to them as naive, or weak, or ignorant, or unimportant, or irrelevant, or sheep, or victims, or doormats. But then, in many ways, we come to rely upon them to meet our needs. And not necessarily intentionally so. We've just learned that we can depend on them. They're our fallback when everything else seems to have fallen away. They are a pick-me-up when we're really down. They are an easy score when nobody else is there to help us out. And sometimes people wonder if they really are just naive, or if they even see what's happening, if they see how people view them, or how people treat them, or if they even care. And rest assured that they see a whole lot more than people think they do, and they care. In fact, they breathe it in deep. And it weighs heavy in their bones before they exhale and let it all go. And there's often a melancholy that lingers and swirls about their souls as they look at their brother who may have forgiven 70 times 7 times, and he looks at them with a knowing smile and does it again. Or when they defer to another in humility and service, and that other person, seizing the opportunity, throws them under the bus. Or when they have given of themselves to another time and time and time and time again, and it's barely even acknowledged and never reciprocated. They're always the bridesmaid, always the stepping stone, always the fallback. Always the one picking up the pieces, always the one cleaning up after the party. And they know it's their own fault because they live by a different code. It's just that sometimes they get really tired. And they wonder if anyone even notices. And if anyone even cares. And Psalm 37 is written to all of those righteous people who suffer in ways that no one else sees. To all of those righteous people who are tired. To all of those righteous people who wonder if it's even worth it. And I hope you read it. That's why I sent the email, because it's actually an amazing psalm. that's filled with insight and beauty and power. And it's so encouraging and it's so practical for us. And if you read it, you probably noticed that there were three very distinct themes that were being woven throughout the psalm. And it's not just like, verses 1 through 6 are this thought, and then 7 through 12. It doesn't work that way. They're just constantly, these same themes, just kind of weaving, and these threads are just seen throughout this whole psalm in just in an amazing and beautiful and an intricate way. Which is kind of why it's hard just to kind of read the psalm and go through it. So what I want to do is I want to kind of pull on some of these threads. And let's expose the threads and examine them and just see some of these ideas, some of these words, some of these encouragements that God has for the righteous. And the first thread we see woven throughout this psalm is the acknowledgement, or it acknowledges the prosperity and the success of immoral, unethical, and sometimes even evil people. Selfish people, greedy people, whom the text calls the wicked. In verse 1 we read, "Do not fret because of evil men, or be envious of those who do wrong." This implies that evil men prosper in ways that others might actually envy them. In verse 7 we read, "Do not fret when evil men succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes." This implies that such people succeed specifically because they are unethical. Verse 12, "The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them." This implies they despise righteous people and see them as those to be taken advantage of. Verse 14, "The wicked draw the sword and bend the bow to bring down the poor and needy, to slay those whose ways are upright." This implies their needs are more important than the needs of others, regardless of what is compassionate, good, or just. Verse 16, "Better the little that the righteous have than the wealth of many wicked." This implies the wicked prosper in unjust ways by doing unjust things and unrighteous things. Verse 21, "The wicked borrow and do not repay." This implies they take advantage of others because they do not play by the rules. Verse 32, "The wicked lie in wait for the righteous, seeking their very lives." This implies they prey on others and see them as a means to an end. Verse 35, "I have seen a wicked and ruthless man flourishing like a green tree in its native soil." This implies they think they're getting away with it and it's all worth it. And I know you see them. Those who put their own interests ahead of the interests of others. Those who get ahead at the expense of others. Those who see the suffering of others and see others going without, but they don't care as long as they get theirs. And honestly, this is pretty much normative in our materialistic, narcissistic culture that proclaims it's all about me. And so I want what you have. And I want you to meet my needs. And so it's very common for people to seek to possess what others have and to impose their will upon other people to get what it is they want, what they desire in life, and to satisfy or to swell their sense of self. I'll give you really one small example of this in our society, although it's not a small example at all, but it's just one, very small example of all of the ways in which we do this is the mind-boggling crime statistics in our society. Because after all, when you think about it, what is crime but achieving my needs and my desires at the expense of someone else? According to NPR, 1 in 15, or 6.6% of the population, will serve time in prison. Between 30 and 40% of Americans will be arrested by age 23. 53% of Americans will be arrested at some point during their lives. That's more than half. According to the Wall Street Journal, 77.7 million people, or a full one-third of the U.S. adult population, are in the FBI criminal database. 10 to 12,000 people are added to that database every single day. Legal scholar Douglas Husak concludes that 70% of the U.S. population have committed crimes that, if discovered, could land them in prison. And 90% have committed crimes that would give them a criminal record. Again, what is crime but achieving my needs, my desires, my wishes at the expense of your needs and your desires, your possessions, your rights, your health, your body, or maybe even your life? And the fact that so many Americans have thought along these lines enough to be included in these statistics makes an incredible ethical statement about where we are as a society. Now, some of you may retort, well, you know, those statistics really, in a sense, are kind of overblown, because so many of the people represented by those statistics really committed victimless crimes, like tax evasion or downloading music or smoking pot, something like that. But then, when you start to drill down into these activities, you realize that they are really not victimless crimes. Tax evasion, for example, shifts the burden away from yourself and onto everybody else. And so it's selfish, and it's stealing from the collective group of taxpayers. Because of the people out there who evade their taxes, now all of the rest of us have to pay a little bit more. Or the downloading of music is really stealing the property rights of the artist, who depends upon those royalties that he would necessarily make by selling that album to someone in order to make a living. And so you're taking, food or bread out of his mouth or off of his table. Smoking pot is a crime against your own body or a crime against your person, but if you're not willing to look at it that way, it does contribute to the drug trafficking in America, which contributes to organized crime and who knows what atrocities across the world, and it also increases the health care burden across America. The point is that we make choices knowing that they will affect others in a negative way. And crime is not even the point. Again, it's one very small part of this argument. It isn't even the issue, but it is symptomatic of the larger culture. And it's a larger culture that believes and acts as if my needs are more important than yours. And how many times do we make decisions along those lines that don't have anything to do with laws or anything to do with crime? Under the name of getting what I want, under the name of getting what it is that I need, how many of us have not done something immoral, unethical, something that is not true or right or kind? Again, how many of us have made decisions to get what we want that negatively impacts someone else? I once had another pastor, this was years ago, blatantly, knowingly steal material that I had written and used it to gain a coveted position, I guess a position that by all rights should have been mine. I once bought a house from a guy who had a good buddy who owned a pest company do the pest inspection, only to find out after we moved into the house that the house was infested with termites, and any novice, including myself, could see it in 5 seconds as soon as you go into the basement area and hold a flashlight up to the wood. It was that bad. And he passed it because the guy was his friend. I once had to pay thousands of dollars in car repair bills because a lady who hit our car in a parking lot lied to her insurance company. And the text, see what's going on here in Psalm 37 is the psalm acknowledges that this happens. The psalm admits that the world is not fair. The psalm is outright acknowledging that selfish, greedy, immoral, unethical, and even evil people sometimes, and maybe even much of the time, prosper and succeed. And then it tells us, don't fret about it. Don't worry. And the word fret that's used here is found 4 times in the Bible, and it's found 3 times, 3 of those times in this particular chapter. And so I believe that makes me kind of sit up and take notice. And I do that because I think the psalm, in doing so, is making a really good point. And that is our natural response to such things, isn't it? When we see stuff like this going on, when we see the evil prosper, when we see bad people getting over on good people, especially when the good people are us or somebody that we love, we fret about that. We're frustrated with that. We're angry with that. We don't like that. It bothers us. It bothers us when people prosper specifically because they don't play by the rules. It bothers us when selfish, ambitious, and unkind people get ahead, specifically because they are the way that they are. It bothers us when people seem to be rewarded for doing the wrong thing. But our frustration is really born out of a fallacy of perception. And the fallacy is this: that such people, A, are prospering, and that they are doing so specifically because of wrongdoing. In other words, it doesn't pay to be good, it pays to be bad. It pays to be a jerk. It pays to be selfish. It pays to be unethical. And the psalm reminds us that yes, such people, the wicked, may seem to prosper for a season. They may seem to prosper for a short time. But in the end, these deeds, these very deeds that you're fretting about, are going to be their undoing. And what God is saying is, look, I got it all under control. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to fret because I'm going to take care of it. And every single one of those passages I read kind of out of the gate where we were talking about the prosperity of the wicked and talking about how they seem to prosper, every single one of those verses comes with a caveat. And I'm not going to read them all because there's so many in there. I'm just going to read you the fret passages. The do not fret passages, the 3 of those, because they contain the line of thinking and the line of thought that this particular psalm undergoes. So in verse 1, do not fret because of evil men or be envious of those who do wrong. Now here's the caveat. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Verses 12 through 15, the wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. The wicked draw the sword and bend the bow to bring down the poor and needy, to slay those whose ways are upright, but their swords will pierce their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. Verses 35 and 36, I have seen a wicked and ruthless man flourishing like a green tree in its native soil, but he soon passed away and was no more. Though I looked for him, he could not be found. Those who satisfy their desires and needs at the expense of others will reap what it is that they have sown. Selfishness, ambition, greed, pride, and evil do not lead to life, they lead to death. And it may appear in the short term that they are winning, but in reality, the seeds that they have planted have not yet sprouted and bore fruit. There's a wonderful illustration of this in The Lord of the Rings, in the history of the ring. And I'll bore you with my nerddom now. But I actually think it's quite profound. And the story goes in the history of the ring that these two hobbit-like creatures are swimming one bright sunny day at the banks of the river Anduin. It is Smeagol's birthday. Deagle, his cousin, dives down to the bottom of the river, and while he's down there, he sees a bright, shiny object, which he grabs and brings to the surface, which, of course, we know to be the alluring ring. The one ring of power, this ring of many powers, not the chief of which, or the least of which, is the ability to impose one's will upon others, which Tolkien saw as the height of evil. And the corrupting effects of the ring are immediate, for both of the creatures desire the ring. They covet the ring. And the conversation goes like this. Smeagol says to Deagle, give me the ring, for it is my birthday. And Deagle says, I already gave you a birthday present, so the ring is mine. Smeagol then strangles Deagle, murders him, takes the ring, and justifies it because it was his birthday. Henceforth, the ring is known as his birthday present. Now, nobody saw what happened. And nobody saw what happened to Deagle. So, for all practical purposes, Smeagol seems to have gotten away with his crimes. Deagle certainly would have thought so because he murdered Deagle, and now for his reward he gets this wonderful and beautiful treasure. And it's his for his very own. But the ring slowly but surely begins to exact a terrible price upon Smeagol. And he begins to use the ring to get what he wants and what he desires, and to impose his will upon others, and it begins to slowly corrupt him. And everything kind of begins to revolve around him, and he becomes obsessive, and he begins to take on frightening personality issues and disorders, which everyone sees around him. And they realize that he's becoming evil. And so his clan grows afraid of him, and they drive him away. And he then begins to wander the wilder lands, and he's racked with guilt and tormented by all of these various emotions because of what he's done. And he's torn and he's pulled within himself to the point where he becomes mentally ill and schizophrenic. And his body shrivels to become less than human. He's disfigured. He is grotesque. Spiritually speaking, he is empty and dead inside. And ultimately, he comes to live as a wraith in the heart of a mountain. Alone, isolated, hungry, and miserable. And yet he believes in his own heart that he is rich because he possesses the ring. And I think one of the lessons, I think certainly that Tolkien would have pointed out, is that those who sell their souls, those who are unethical, immoral, selfish, what have you, who do whatever it takes to prosper, are sad and pitiful people. That they are miserable creatures deluded in a fantasy that they are rich, powerful, and successful. And that in reality, they will wither and fade. It's interesting that as you use the ring, your body begins to fade over time. And I'll tie it back into the psalm now. On 4 different occasions, the psalmist uses the term wither in relation to the wicked. Not just their possessions, not just their acts, not just the things that they do and that they have. He says that the wicked themselves will wither and fade. Verse 20 says, they will all vanish like smoke. In other words, theirs is the way to death. They believe they're happening. They believe they're substantial. They believe that what they are and what they are doing is so real and makes them look so big to everybody else. But spiritually and in the true economy of the universe, they are vanishing away and becoming absolutely nothing. And so we see this progression through the psalm as these threads are woven through. And there is this thread that, again, acknowledges the seasonal prosperity of the wicked and those who are immoral and unethical and don't play by the rules and seem to try to get over on everyone else. And then now there is this other thread that tells the righteous, don't worry about them. God is in control. He's going to take care of all of these things. And then there's one final thread, and this is the one that I think is so important for you and I to pay attention to. Because I believe that the first 2 definitely speak to the righteous and those who suffer silently as they see all of these things going on in the world. Because first, it validates their feelings by saying, yes, I understand these things are happening. And then it gives them hope by saying, God's going to take care of them and satisfies their sense of justice. But then there's this other sense of what's the point? Why do what's right? Does it even pay to do the right thing? And that's where this last thread comes in. And it's here where the Lord then talks about how He has promised justice and validation and blessing and reward for the righteous. That nobody else may see what is going on. Nobody else may understand. Nobody else may comprehend what it is that you're going through and how much it costs you in your heart spiritually to do the things that you are doing. But the Lord sees, and rest assured, He will reward you and He will take care of you. 5 times the text says that the wicked will be cut off from the land. 7 times it says that the righteous will inherit the land in this psalm. In fact, it is largely believed that Jesus was quoting this psalm in the Beatitudes when He said that the meek shall inherit the earth. And I believe that He was talking about both a spiritual reality, but both a present and a future reality. In verses 28 and 29, we read, "For the Lord loves the just and will not forsake His faithful ones." Isn't that a great promise? Think about that. All those times when you've seen somebody get over on you or something happen that just wasn't right. And how many things happen in this society that are just not right? It happens every day. It happens all the time. And we just sit there and take it. And we're told we're supposed to take it. Turn the other cheek. Go the extra mile. Give to the one who wants to borrow from you. So even as a Christian, you feel guilty in even standing up for your rights. And so you're sitting there and you're taking it. And then you read, "For the Lord loves the just and will not forsake His faithful ones." They will be protected forever. The context here is that the Lord is watching, the Lord sees, but remember there's an eternal perspective. There's an eternal nature to this whole thing. And the Lord sees that perfectly. You don't see it. You don't see what's around the next bend. But man, you are going to be so excited when you see how the Lord is going to resolve all of this. It's amazing. They will be protected forever, but the offspring of the wicked will be cut off. The righteous will inherit the land and will dwell in it forever. And it talks about our inheritance. Actually, that was the subject in our Sunday school class today. In my class, we were talking about inheritance and how in the Old Testament, it's always tied to the land. But there's illusions of something bigger that's out there, and that is the kingdom of God. And we know that even though this is an Old Testament passage, that's exactly what this text is talking about, because we know that the old heaven and the old earth will pass away, but there is going to be a new heaven and a new earth that is the inheritance for the children of God. And that's what it's referring to here. And he's saying, man, don't worry. I understand that in this world that stuff happens, that garbage happens, that you get dumped on, that evil people get over on the good. But man, there's a day coming, and the Lord's going to fix all that, and it's going to be incredible. And justice and righteousness will fall like rain. And then the Lord starts giving us promises. In fact, there are probably more promises quoted from Psalm 37 than maybe just about any other chapter in the Bible. Verses 4 through 7, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. Think about this. Right now, all this stuff happens, and we let it go. Stuff that happened 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Stuff that we suffered through because it was the right thing to do. And He says that one day, it's all going to come out, and it's going to be front and center once again. And the justice of your cause will, like the noonday sun, will shine like the noonday sun. And your righteousness, how you handled that, will shine like the dawn. And the dawn is, if you think about it, that image, there's all this darkness. And the righteous acts of the righteous ones are going to come up, and they're going to be exposed, and it will shine like the new dawn. What incredible poetry. I didn't want to just spend 5-6 weeks in all of these Psalms, so I got to abbreviate this stuff. I mean, we're getting the Reader's Digest version, but we can dwell into this. And you begin to see such beauty and such power. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when evil men succeed in their ways and when they carry out their wicked schemes. But we wait patiently for Him. Why? Because He's going to make it right. Verses 10 and 11, another promise. A little while and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy great peace. Again, this is the text that Jesus quotes in the Beatitude, a promise that even Jesus claims. Verse 19, better the little that the righteous have than the wealth of many wicked. And of course, there's even a hint of sarcasm in this text, kind of a wink, wink. Because the text goes on to explain how everything the wicked have and everything they are will fade and will wither, but what the righteous have will stand and will last forever. Verse 24, if the Lord delights in a man's ways, He makes his steps firm. Though he stumble, he will not fall. Verse 25, I was young and now I am old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging for bread. Verse 28, turn from evil and do good, and then you will dwell in the land forever. Again, this idea of possessing the land forever, which, again, we know is an allusion to the kingdom of God. For the Lord loves the just and will not forsake His faithful ones. Wait for the Lord, verse 34, and keep His way. In other words, you keep doing the right thing. Keep walking in the ways of the Lord. Don't worry about the wicked. Don't respond to evil with evil. Wait for the Lord and keep His way, and He will exalt you to inherit the land Verses 39 and 40, the salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. He is their stronghold in times of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in Him. And what we see here in Psalm 37 is one promise after another. In the context of evil prospering. One promise after another in the context of this very discussion about how it seems to pay to do the wrong thing. And what about those of us who are struggling to do the right things, but nobody even seems to care? Nobody even seems to notice. In fact, they just take advantage of us all the more. And then God just gives us one promise after another. And they all revolve around the kingdom of God. And there is this idea that God is king. And that He is sovereign. And that one day He is going to make all of this right. You see, again, going back to the text, He talks about the fretting. You know, again, it's easy not to fret. Or it's easy to fret. It's easy to be unsettled. It's easy to be upset by all of these things. In fact, what does the old saying go? If you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And the truth is that the righteous do suffer in ways that other people do not see. That evil often triumphs over the good. Now, the world is not fair and the world is not just, and I'll conclude with this. But this is the difference between the secular and the spiritual mind. The secular mind says, well, you know, that this is all there is, and this is just the way of the world. You know, it's survival of the fittest. It's eat or be eaten. You're either predator or prey. And so when my opportunity comes, right now I'm weak, but I'm going to become stronger. So when my opportunity comes, when that crack in the door opens, I'm going to kick it in, and I'm going to get mine, and I'm going to get what's coming to me, and then I'm going to be the one sitting on top. And the spiritual mind says that God is in control, and that God is sovereign, and that He is just, and that He is fair, and that He is righteous, and that His kingdom is advancing even now. And the momentum is building, and the momentum is growing, and it pays to be a part of His kingdom. It pays to be one of His children, because one day He is going to make it all right. One day His kingdom is going to be fully established. And it is then that every wrong will be made right, and we can trust in Him, and we can trust in His promises. And so we endure just a little while longer. We hold out, and we do the right thing for the sake of righteousness, for the sake of the righteous one who bought us. And we cling to what is right and to what is good and what is true, knowing that even if no one else sees, the Lord knows. And one day, the righteous will shine like the morning dawn.